Him and Brian would hang out more than anybody.
Yeah. We can talk about this later, but if you knew Bobby very well for a long time, you know that guy lived through a lot of hard stuff. A lot of hard stuff. But recently, he was trying to prepare to go on a camping trip with Caroline and Eric, and he was trying to get some things ready for them. And they have like a little camper that he pulled out and was, I think he told me he was using the power washer to clean it up, and was up on a ladder. And I don't remember all the details of what happened, but in any event, he ended up falling off of the ladder. And he told me about his fall, that he had the presence of mind, you know, to try to be on his back so he could roll, or on a side so he could roll, and he was shooting for the grass, and he just missed it, and he just crushed his heel on his, and I do not remember, he sent me a picture of it, but I don't remember if it was his right or left heel, but it was a mess, a real mess, and they had to put plates and multiple screws and what have you in it. So that laid him up, and when he was up, you guys have all seen him now, that you know they put you on a little scooter so you can put your bad leg on the scooter and get around still. So that's what he was limited to. And you all know him, so you know that didn't sit well and made life really hard for him. And it was, I don't know, maybe a couple of months after that, again, I'll shorten this up. He got to feeling bad, and Caroline was concerned about him. Really tired, and just wasn't right. And she kept asking him, you know, do you have a fever? No, I don't think I have a fever. And his big fear, you would all know that he was very much conscious of COVID because of his liver transplant and his immunosuppressives that he had to stay on. So his immune system was depleted, and that's the worst thing you can encounter COVID with. So he was really concerned about that and trying to be very careful, and that was the first thing on their minds. I know it was the first thing on Caroline's mind. But in any event, he just in just a few days he went downhill, and she finally got him to take his temperature. And again, if you've been around him very much in these times, he's just one of those, when he's sick, it's kind of stoicism. Let me just get through this kind of thing. And she told me she took his temperature and it was over 103. And so they called the doctors that he's very familiar with, and was told to get to the hospital. He went to the hospital. He's in the ICU. They thought they isolated the problem to bacterial infection. He didn't have COVID. Thought they isolated it to a bacterial infection in his colon, and started him on a strong regimen of antibiotics. And as the time went along, and we're just talking about days, as time went along, they found that bacteria attacked his kidneys and essentially shut them down. So they put him on permanent dialysis while he was there. Then they found the infection in a heart valve, and ultimately they found it in his blood. And so the news wasn't good, and it made it extra hard on Eric and Caroline that they wouldn't let him in the hospital because of COVID. And they found a friendly nurse, and Caroline got to go up and be with him a little bit. By that time, though, he was pretty much incoherent and didn't have much communication at all. And she called a couple of times. Once, I think, was when her first time up there, and she was telling me about him and just asked to pray. And so she set the phone down by him had me pray for him because she thought he could still hear. So she wanted me to pray while he could still hear. And it seems like maybe it was a day later, like don't hold me to these days, that she had sent me a text and thought maybe some of his numbers were improving, so there was some hope there. But she called me and said that he had crashed, and they had worked on him to try to revive him for about 25 minutes, and they had told her their cutoff was going to be a half hour, and then he got a pulse. So it was, I don't know, maybe 1 o'clock, something like that in the morning, and she called me and said, would you pray again? And we went through that same routine, and then he left here at about 4 o'clock in the morning after we had prayed. And those are so hard and difficult things to do, to walk through with, for them especially, but to try to walk through with them, that I really felt for them. But guys, I got to tell you that it's amazing, and we are reflective of just a small group of people. I was kind of talking to Sam about this the other day. There are literally people, I said all over the country because I was aware of several of those, but Caroline said no, truthfully, all over the world, that he was special to. Now, tell me this, especially those of you who got to be around him, maybe not every time if you were around him a lot and frequently, but he was one of those kind of guys when he was around you, you were the important one. And that's a real gift. And that's one of the things that I remember. I'm just telling in general the story. I just remember that in all the circumstances that I was with Bobby from the time he got to know the Lord. This just kind of came out. Doesn't matter what country we're in or what circumstance we were in. He was going to give. He was gonna give to you. Now, if you challenged him on a basketball court, he wasn't going to give. He was going to compete. But otherwise, he was just one of those givers. He was generous with his time, generous with his interest, generous with his money sometimes, and an envious trait. What I try to do is we'll just share one story or one memory at a time and make sure everybody gets a shot at it. Anybody got something you're ready to share? Don't. It doesn't matter. It means something to you, then we're ready to hear it, and I'm sure Caroline and Eric are.
It's just a little thing. Little thing was big to me. But, so, all the time, really until the kids were out of the house, we just we couldn't, the Lord always provided for us, but we had no extra. It was like, we didn't have extra to do the things that we wanted to do for our kids, to buy them the cool things and whatever. And Bobby, so we got hand-me-downs from folks, and I think Sam was looking at a picture and said something about, I think Pat next door gave me that coat, or whatever. We got hand-me-downs, but Bobby would buy the kids really cool things, a cool watch, or if he saw they needed a pair of shoes, he would just show up with some cool shoes for their birthday or whatever. And he was just so generous with his money and his attention, with all the kids.
Well, he loved kids, I know he spent a lot of time with Kyle. He babysat Kyle still, and he just loved them. He worked at the zoo and talked to him about the zoo.